Sri Krishna is a motivational speaker because he's able to motivate Arjun. My life is for my sake, my accomplishments, my happiness. And the Gita turns it around. You put in your efforts, but for the pleasure of the Lord. Karmanne vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadacha. Do your duty, but don't be invested emotionally in the outcomes.
If someone's going through this divorce or breakup, what is the solution to this issue?
I thought there was happiness in worldly relationships, and this is a wake-up call. Look, where have you been searching?
We created our own suffering, God didn't. When was at first quote-unquote bad karma done by us to give us this suffering?
This whole journey began at minus eternity. And there's no beginning for God, and there is no end as well. Whatever is written in your destiny will come in any case. खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा खुद बंदे से पूछे पता तेरी रजा क्या. Oh Shri Krishna, I will do as you say.
Radhe Radhe, Swami Mukundananda ji, thank you so much for being on Under the Tree with me today.
Radhe Radhe Meera, thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to be speaking to you.
It's we've been wanting to have you on the show for so long, and just a few weeks back, Swami Sarvapriyananda ji was here, and you both had a very wonderful interaction some time back. So it's so great to have you here. And just a little bit about me. So I just completed my education in consciousness studies at Maharishi International University. So actually, it's like the first university in the entire world to be having a core curriculum in consciousness and Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas. So it was a great opportunity to be able to study there. I actually studied at University of Southern California for 6 months. And then because of my spiritual transformation, decided to shift gears and move over there, which was definitely a blessing in disguise. So, of course, I would love to start talking about this whole idea of, we usually refer to who am I, but nowadays a lot of people are saying, what am I? And really getting to know thyself. And this is something that no one better can explain than you.
Well, Meera, the sacred knowledge from our Vedic texts that has been presented over the millennia by the saints. In modern times, it needs a change of user interface. You know, for the youth of today and the modern minds to connect with it. We're very happy to hear about the consciousness studies by the Maharishi Institute, and glad to know of your interest and your education in this.
Thank you. And I think first, if you could talk about like this, answering this question of, because this one question really prevails amongst all of us, that what is my true nature, right? I am here, am I just the mind and body? Like, am I just this physical body that's 5'3", that's 120 pounds, that's, fair skin? Like, is that really just me? Or do I have a much more vast definition than this body and intellect?
Yes, the body is constantly changing. If you look at your family album, you will see a 2-year-old and say, that's me. Then a 6-year-old and say, Swamiji, that is also me. And then a 15-year-old, and then a 20-year-old. So if we were the body, we would have changed multiple times in our life. But we realize I'm still the same person, which means that my identity of self is coming from something apart from the body. And the same argument applies to the mind as well. Our thoughts keep on changing, but we realize I am still the same person. So the understanding of who am I, the easiest way to do it is to receive it through the descending process of knowledge and then validate it through your own experience. What does that mean? That you access these sacred books and they tell you of the presence of a spiritual entity in your personality called the soul. So that soul is divine, it is the real you. But because of the ego, because of the mind, we are identifying with the material aspects of our personality. And if you wish to experience yourself, you will have to purify the mind. And then when the mind gets completely pure, let's say it gets dropped, now you will see the self by realization. Oh, I am not the body. Oh, I am not these thoughts. I am beyond, not even the intellect. So that will require conducting the process of self-purification. Before that, you accept the authority of these books which say that, Meera, you are the divine soul.
It's a personal problem that I would love to share with you, that when I became aware of this knowledge, and it got strengthened, of course, but I had this sense of, I wouldn't call it like a depression state, but it was more of like a state of, being callous, or like, okay, then what's the point now of life if I can't identify with how I look, or how people think of me, or how smart I am, or how famous I am, or how whatever it is, then what's the point of me doing anything? Like, why should I even do an action? And this also goes back to the Bhagavad Gita, of how Lord Krishna explains that don't think about the fruit of the action, but it's very hard because we're so used to that. So when you say we're not the mind, we're not the body, we have this true nature, it just makes me question. It's like a little fight that even goes inside me for a long time.
That's right. But these kinds of dilemmas, they can actually benefit you as well. Because the Bhagavad Gita starts with the mental confusion of Arjuna. Right? So intelligently, Ved Vyas has named the first chapter of the Gita as Arjuna Vishad Yog. Vishad means gloom, despondency. Arjuna has fallen into despondency. But Yog, that despondency becomes a springboard for enlightenment. Likewise, when you got this aspect of knowledge, it created a mental, intellectual crisis in you. And what is the purpose of life? But then you search for answers, and you come across a higher purpose. So the purpose you were identifying with, the self you were identifying with, that no longer has significance to the extent that you thought. But it doesn't mean that there are no higher purposes. You see, holy people are full of inspiration. They are so full of a sense of purpose that they have given up a lower purpose and found a purpose that is extremely fulfilling. It's just like when you were a child, playing with the dolls was very important. If your friend snatched the doll, it was like a disaster. But then as a teenager, you realize it was not as important as I made it out to be. Likewise, on the spiritual journey, if you realize that what you thought as purpose is no longer significant, it is no reason to be despondent. It's a reason to fill yourself with optimism. I found something so much more valuable. I was playing with broken pieces of glass, and now I have knowledge of the diamonds which I wish to search for in my life.
And because you were talking about the Bhagavad Gita and Lord Krishna, so why is Lord Krishna considered, we have so many motivational speakers now in the world, but the number one remains Lord Krishna, who is able to get, as you said, Arjuna out of a state of complete depression, of complete confusion, which it's extremely difficult. So why or how, like if we are in this, we face so many problems on a day-to-day basis. How can we use the guidance of, for example, one of the most holy books, the Bhagavad Gita, to come out of our confusions or daily issues in life?
I like the way you put it. Sri Krishna is a motivational speaker because he's able to motivate Arjun. And what is the means of his motivation? Wisdom. There's one external motivation. The carrot and stick one. If you do this, you will get this carrot. If you don't, then there is the stick. And there's another internal motivation that needs no temptations from the outside. That motivation comes from our values, from our beliefs. And how are beliefs formed? Healthy beliefs are formed through clear understanding. So Sri Krishna just clarifies certain things for Arjun's intellect. And when Arjun realizes, oh my God, there was no need to lament for all this. It changes the way he looks at the world, changes the way he looks at himself, and it fills him with a sense of purpose. So at the very end, Sri Krishna says, Arjun, what is your state now? Arjun says, Nashto mohaha smritir labdha karishye vachanam tava. O Sri Krishna, my doubts are dispelled. I am seated in knowledge. And now I will do as you say. That's the power of knowledge which Sri Krishna uses.
It is, because when I first became familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, and even throughout my education and consciousness, that was a core text of ours. And as we studied through it, I was able to understand how it's not just some philosophical text that was just what some people, naysayers, like to say was made up, and it was, mythological, and it was just written by whoever, but it's actually real, and it has benefits to everyone who actually reads it. You flip any page, you'll find an answer to your life's issue. And this goes on to this segment that we play in every single podcast we do, where it's we put up a few practical problems that are happening in the lives of youngsters or anyone in any age group, and then with your wisdom, you can tell me how bhakti or how devotion or reading the Bhagavad Gita, for example, can actually help you get out of that issue.
Sure.
So the first scenario, let's take exam season is going on, and there are students who maybe intentionally have studied, have prepared, haven't put in all their right actions, right? As per dharma, they've done their duty. But we all know that there are different factors in life. You call it destiny, you call it karma, that sometimes might result in obstacles in such material endeavors. So let's say someone is preparing and they fail in their exam, or they don't get admission into IIT or IIM. How can that student at that point react to that decision? He is feeling anxious, depressed. His parents are mad at him. Maybe he's put in all his effort with his pure heart. How can he bounce back?
People, that's very correct. People create these goals, and more often than not, the goals are not fulfilled. And then they feel bad about it, and some of them cannot handle the failure, and that sends them into depression. But it does not have to be that way. A little bit of wisdom changes the whole perspective. One geologist thought of physically studying the Ganga. He got a map of the Ganga. He went to Uttar Kashi ahead of Rishikesh with the map in his hand. And alongside with the map, he was walking by the side of the Ganga and just checking out. Yes, the map says it should be going to the left. That's right. It should be veering to the right. That's right. And in one place, the Ganga did not conform to his map. So he said, the Ganga is not in line with my map. Then what is the use of studying it? He threw his map, frustrated, and left. What was the mistake he was making? He was expecting the Ganga to be in line with his map, whereas it should be the other way around.
Right, right.
Likewise, we create these desires. I want this, I want to achieve that. And when the universe doesn't fulfill the desires, we feel disappointed, we feel cheated, we feel left out. Betrayed. Yes, betrayed, that's right. Instead of that, if we can just accept the goal of the universe is not to fulfill my desires. I am there for the sake of the universe and not the other way around. So people who are getting stressed, if you go to the root of the root of the root, it is the selfish intent. My life is for my sake, my accomplishments, my happiness. And the Gita turns it around. Develop a service attitude. You put in your efforts, but for the pleasure of the Lord. So the fruits are for His enjoyment. If He decides that these fruits should not be given to you right now, you will have no frustration when you keep the service attitude.
And you have that faith that the Supreme God has a higher or greater plan for you. Might not be what you want, but it will be better for you.
Absolutely.
I think that what you just answered, whoever's watching, either if they're a student themselves or if they're a parent who has children who are taking exams or trying to get into university, this is something they should really take away. It'll give that right state of mind that they need to overcome if failures do come. So
that's right, Meera. One formula to keep in mind. Karmannevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Do your duty, but don't be invested emotionally in the outcomes. So what is stressing us out is not the hard work. You could work from morning to night and only feel more fulfilled as a consequence of it. But when we become attached, it should be like this, it should not be like that. Then we start developing the stream of negative thoughts. What if it doesn't happen? And that stream is what stresses us out. And it affects our performance as well. Because now our mind is divided between our effort and thinking about the results. But instead, if we could just be in the moment and say, let me do my best now and leave the rest to God, we will do better and without any experience of stress.
It's very, very well said. Now, another common situation that I think most people either have experienced in life or are yet to experience is that if you are going through a situation where you've invested your emotions in some other person, so whether it can be of any relationship, divorce rates, as you know, are rising, especially in the US, now even in India, breakups, relationships, these are very common. Now, I can just tell you what I think, that when I see these types of situations, I personally believe that you're trying to find happiness in some other person. And I feel like the core problem is there, because if you think that some other person can give you happiness, then that's not the right state of mind to look at it. If you aren't happy yourself in a state of contentment, how do you expect that another person can fulfill that?
That's very correct.
And the practical situation I want to put up to you is that if someone's going through this divorce or breakup or relationship issue, that's like they're experiencing pain, agony. First of all, blame game goes on where they're blaming the other person. It's their fault. What is the solution to this issue?
Absolutely. So the reason for the rise in divorce rates is the increase in materialism in society. In the year 2000, when I went to the West first time, and I looked up the divorce rates in India, it was not there on the charts.
Really? Wow.
That's because it was so low, it just did not figure in the list of countries. But now India is catching up with the West. particularly the metropolitans, because materialism is just making people more and more selfish. And that selfishness makes them think that the relationship is for my happiness and the other has got the same formula. So the moment there's a clash of self-happiness, the fight begins. And spirituality reverses that. Spirituality helps you bring a service attitude. A service attitude in your leadership position. I am facilitating the journey of others. A service attitude in using your talents to make a difference in this world, even in the life of one person. And a service attitude to your relationships as well. So, somebody's spouse may have defects, but the service attitude will say, I don't reject the person because of defects. I help the person grow. That's what it's meant to be, right? The marriage is a
Union is, yes.
where both are assisting each other. Now, let us say sometimes it is possible that there was a complete incompatibility or there were mistakes made because of which they are going through divorce. Then they need to handle this with wisdom. दे धरे का दंड है सब काहू को होय, ज्ञानी भुगते ज्ञानते मूर्ख भुगते रोय. One day all the relatives will pass away one by one. Those who don't have knowledge, they cry. So and so left, so and so left. Those who have knowledge, they reframe the situation. This is called positive reframing of a negative situation, right? So you see grace in it. I thought there was happiness in worldly relationships, and this is a wake-up call. Look, where have you been searching? Let me take it as an opportunity to deepen my spiritual quest. Positive thinking means that no matter what the situation, you see the positive and you move ahead.
I love the word you used about grace, because this is something, I mean, if I'm just talking about myself, I've been able to feel this because things happen in everyone's life. But I think, at first, I'm going to be very honest with you, I used to blame other people for my failure, or if something bad has happened to me, I would blame the other side. I wouldn't look that maybe inside me there was some fault, or I could also improve on some aspects. I think this is something, and I don't know if this is part of that spiritual journey, but I feel that, let's be real, I think maybe not you because you're so spiritually evolved, but a lot of us here and myself, we've all done either mistakes, or we've encountered emotions like jealousy or competition or ego. And how can we blame, someone else for, being rude to us? I mean, how many times we've also, done something maybe even unintentionally. So I think being able to look at ourselves is very important. I don't know if you have.
Yes, it is the crux of spiritual growth. The first step is exactly this, to detach your mind from the externals. So, as little children, we were immature. And when we experienced a negative emotion, our knee-jerk reaction was to blame. This person's fault, I'm annoyed. It is creation's fault. Now, as we grow up, we are expected to mature. And maturity means take responsibility for your emotions. Situations may not be in line with my expectations, but I always have a choice what to think. So most people don't realize this gap between the environment and their thoughts. They have not learned to decouple the two. And that is why the switch for the key for their emotions is on the outside. Somebody can make them elated, and then somebody can also make them dejected. But spirituality teaches you that, look, you have to decouple this. You have to take responsibility for your mind, and you have to work on making your own mind positive, uplifted. And when you start doing that, you will start seeing the perfection in external things. Ishavasimidam sarvam. This world is being created by the perfect source. It is perfectly arranged for the elevation of my soul. And the negative stimuli on the outside are in fact opportunities for spiritual growth. Now, very interestingly, Saint Kabir says, Nindak niyare rakhiye angan kuti chabai, nit sabun pani bina nirmal kare subhai. See, a worldly person blames. You behaved badly, you created negativity. And Saint Kabir is saying, if you wish to purify your mind, find somebody who is a critic and give that person opportunity to ridicule you. You just tolerate. Without soap and water, you'll find your mind getting purified.
That is the biggest test, of course. And now, because we're going so deep into this topic, there's no one better to ask this whole phenomenon but you. And I'm going to be talking about this with the most curiosity coming from me. Is that a lot of times, for me, Krishna is very, very close to me, and sometimes I'm just talking to Krishna, and I feel like he's a real personality. I always wonder that sometimes I just pause in life and think that what is this divine play going on? Because everything looks so real, right? Everything looks so even it's matter, and everything looks so real around us. The suffering is real, or at least the pain is real. It just makes me wonder that why and how was this whole created? Because there are different theories, right, that go back to this. Because it's if you say that God loves us, why would he give us suffering? Then there is that logic that we created our own suffering, God didn't. But then how did we create our own suffering? When did that first step begin? When was that first quote unquote bad karma done by us to give us this suffering? I hope my thought process is kind of making a bit sense.
The soul is on a journey of evolution. And in that evolution, we may see ourselves as imperfect, but God does not. It's like the child in the mother's womb, a 4-month-old child. We may say, what? The child doesn't even have properly developed limbs. But the mother knows the child is perfect. Likewise, in the grand design of the Supreme, these souls will reach an ultimate perfection. We may seem imperfect from our perspective, but he has faith in his process. And this whole journey began at minus eternity. Okay, so the concept of minus eternity is difficult to understand. You say, what was the first point? If there was a first point, then there was a beginning. And there is no beginning for the soul, and there is no beginning for God. And there is no end as well.
So when we encounter sufferings in life, instead of pointing the finger at God, should we say that we created at least some of the, what you call negative things that happen in our life? Or
the real suffering is from our own mind. This mind is such a thing, it can create heaven out of hell and hell out of heaven. Somebody in the midst of all opulence can say that I am completely disturbed. And somebody living in a thatched hut in a simple rural village can say, God is so kind, I'm so blessed. So in both cases, it is the mind that is creating heaven and the mind that is creating hell. Now, the suffering that we experience, there is a reality to it as well. And what is the reality? It says there's 3 kinds of suffering. Adi Atmik, Adi Daivik, Adi Bhautik. Some suffering due to natural calamities. There's the heat, the summer and the winter, etc. Some suffering due to other living beings. It could be human beings, it could be mosquitoes, whatever. And some suffering due to our own body and our own mind. So, in the external sufferings, it is always best to have faith in the grand design of God. That He has created this as a place of austerity, as the university of hard knocks for the evolution of my soul. If I can just adjust my attitude, these sufferings will become opportunities for progress. Right? The suffering that we create for ourselves through our mind, that is the one that we need to eliminate. And when we eliminate that, then the saints tell us, Siya Ramamaya Sabajagajani. They see the form of God in this very world itself.
I think you cleared up what was in my mind, because this also, it's bringing up memories of, for example, there's a devotee of Neem Karoli Baba Ramdas who became a very, very famous motivational speaker and gave lectures as well. And in the last 20 years of his life, he got stroke and became paralyzed. But till the last day, he said that this is just pure grace. He said, this was the choice of God or my guru, and he didn't complain even once about his condition. He said this is just plain grace, and he's accepting it, and he's loving it and helping people.
Yeah, that is a tremendous example of somebody who has learned the art of positivity. Actually, psychologists have done these experiments on lottery winners of the American Lotto. When they first got the prize of $600 million, there was sudden spurt in happiness. And then after 1 year, where were they? They realized that their level of happiness, these psychologists, they found the level of happiness had returned to the pre-lottery time in the space of 1 year. In fact, many of them had gone into depression, despondency, criminality, addictions, etc., etc. On the other hand, paraplegics who suddenly suffered strokes, etc., when it happened, they found that the happiness went straight down into a trough. But 1 year later, it had turned back to the same level because they found meaning and purpose in handling that. You see, when Hurricane Katrina hit Atlanta, right? The experience of correspondence was that there was a sense of tremendous gratitude amongst the survivors. Rather than being so frustrated, oh my God, what happened? They were thanking the Lord for still being alive. So it just makes us aware of the graces that we have been taking for granted. And beyond that, the sense of purpose, that is the real fulfilling thing. So if Ramdas has that sense of purpose, it gives him the fuel to handle the adversities in his life.
Yes, I think that's what we all need, and what you've mentioned in these last couple minutes is so important. It was able to clear up my confusion in my head. I'm sure whoever's listening will be able to relate to it as well. And so as you know, because I was studying Upanishads, Mundaki Upanishads, Swami Sarvapinandaji, and recently we had this chapter where, and you would know better, I'm just a seeker, it talked about astrology being not lower knowledge, but conventional knowledge. So it didn't say that it's a higher truth. And it said, it talked about like performing fire rituals and some of the rituals that are done related to astrology. So that did give me the understanding through my teacher that astrology is definitely not the highest truth. However, our scriptures do have that mention of astrology. So why is it mentioned if it's not the ultimate?
The Mundaka Upanishad divides knowledge into two parts. Dve vidye veditavye parachaiva paracha. There's paravidya, divine knowledge, and aparavidya, material knowledge. So the term material knowledge includes all the worldly sciences, plus astrology and the like. And then there is transcendental knowledge, which is spiritual knowledge for the soul. So the Mundaka Upanishad is explaining that the rituals in our Vedas, which are so many, are all a part of material knowledge. Now that is apparently contradictory because people do rituals and feel very religious about it. The Mundaka Upanishad says, look, just the external acts is good. Something is better than nothing. But they must result in the inner transformation. The mind is the cause of bondage. The mind is the cause of liberation. So alongside with that, it brings in astrology as well. Astrology is very fascinating. Before I became a monk, I was also dabbling in quasi-spirituality. I call it quasi-spirituality. So I used to read the hands of all my classmates and, things like that. Good entertainment. But when I came to spirituality, I just tossed it all. Whatever is written in your destiny will come in any case. If you start delving into it, there's a big danger you become superstitious, and a big danger you lose focus on the effort that is in your hand. So instead of that, just focus on doing your best, like the poet Alma Iqbal put it so well. Khudi ko kar buland itna. Khudi is your self-effort. Ki har takdeer se pehle. Before giving the fruits of destiny, Khuda khud bande se puche, pata teri raza kya hai?
I understand. Yes. That's beautifully said, definitely. And Swamiji, you have a big background on what we call yoga, which is, again, it's a lifestyle, including yoga and many other factors. So I was just reading about this recently. I don't have much knowledge about, I think it's called Ashtanga Yoga, which is eight limbs of yoga, as per the Patanjali. So I'm just a seeker, so I would love for you to dive into that a little bit, just to explain what that exactly is.
Meera, as Indians, it gives us great sense of satisfaction to see the concept of yoga becoming so popular in the West. In America, statistics say that 1 out of 7 Americans are now practicing yoga. So the word yoga is an aberration of yoga, which is there in the scriptures. The scriptures don't say yoga, they say yoga. And yoga is the union of the consciousness, the individual consciousness with the Supreme. So the yogic system says that your body is the means. If you wish to achieve yoga, you keep your body fit. And for that, our Vedic system of thought presents many tools, which Maharishi Patanjali has included. So he starts off with yam and then niyam and then asan. So asan, the physical postures, has been adopted in the West. Beyond that is pranayam, then pratyahar, dharan, dhyan, samadhi. So the yoga that I have established, I call it JK Yoga, or yoga for the body, mind and soul. So it integrates bodily processes for good health and breathing techniques, mind management techniques, and the elevation of the soul. Specifically, in the system that I teach, there are 5 sciences that we combine. The first is the physical postures, or the yogasanas. The second is the breathing techniques, or the pranayama. The third is meditation for mind management. The fourth is a deep healing technique called subtle body relaxation. It's a devotional form of yoga nidra. And the fifth is the science of healthy diet. So I explain to people that the practice of these 5 sciences will help you at the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual levels.
That makes a lot of sense, and I've noticed that in my personal life that like throughout my spiritual journey, for example, I started following Ayurveda in terms of diet, and just leaving things like onion and garlic, and just having a sattvic diet, like homemade sattvic diet, definitely helped purify the mind. I was able to, for example, notice that. Then in addition to just bhakti, devotion, in addition to also studying some scriptures, so I feel that a combination of everything definitely helps one in their journey. And this leads me to, of course, talking about something that I guess you can say a dilemma, but as I was mentioning that for me, Krishna is someone who I like, it's just a part of me, I would say. And that's why I can't ever get rid of bhakti or devotion. But because my interest in Vedanta increased so much, that side of Gyan Yoga, of course, is something I also feel is very liberating, and it's the truth. So how do we combine these two paths? And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's facing this conflict of bhakti and gyan, because sometimes a lot of people say they're contradictory, right? You were mentioning earlier about individual consciousness. So for example, individual consciousness is, I think in duality, we say that we all have individual souls. But in non-duality, for example, we say that there is one light shining on all of us, that all-pervasive consciousness. So how to get rid of this, contradiction and try to combine these paths together?
Yes, now you are trying to pull me into deep philosophy. Just a little bit. True knowledge should always be accompanied with devotion. Knowledge will always result in love. Let us say that I offered you a paras, the philosopher's stone, which has the ability, it's a mythical stone, which has the ability to transform iron into gold. Now I gave you a stone, you had no knowledge of it. There's no love towards it. But you experimented and discovered its powers. You say, oh my God, all my material problems are now solved. You would have tremendous love for the stone. To evoke that love, you did not need to do any Tratak meditation, any Kundalini Jagran, any Japa, any Kirtan. All you did was your intellect realized the value of it, and the knowledge led to love. So, real knowledge is always accompanied by love. Now, when it comes to the supreme reality, different Jagat Gurus had different perspectives. So there is a perspective of Shankaracharya, and there's the perspective of how it is understood by the followers. It's just like Swami Vivekananda said, that to understand what I did would need another Swami Vivekananda. Otherwise, people will misunderstand. Right? So likewise, these great teachers, they had a work at hand. They taught as per time, place, and circumstance. And that is what Shankaracharya did. So now when we come to the way we are understanding Vedanta, Vedanta is what? The end of the Vedas. It's a name given to the Brahma Sutra. So people have kind of tried to just identified Vedanta means Gyan Yoga. However, great bhakti saints, Ramanujacharya, he also wrote a commentary on Vedanta. Vallabhacharya, he wrote a commentary on Vedanta. Madhvacharya wrote a commentary, and they explained that this Vedas, the Upanishads, are not contradictory to love. They are teaching you how to love. Okay? So, if it is a fact that there is no differentiation in consciousness, then you don't need to ask me any questions, because questions are only where there is duality. And if there is no duality, then there is no need to answer and no need to ask, right? So intuitively we realize that there is a duality. Within that duality, there is unity. So there's unity in duality and duality in unity.
That is a wonderful explanation. It also clears up my my doubts as well regarding that. And you were talking about Adi Shankaracharya ji, and that's why there's that. I won't get too much into it, but that last story of him where about Bhaj Govindam, where he that I think you know what I'm talking about. So as much as he was a preacher of Advait Vedanta, of non-duality, he was a preacher of love and of Krishna.
Yes, absolutely.
So that proves it. I'm having so much fun talking to you about this, and you can probably imagine my interest in deep philosophy throughout this conversation.
See, Meera, there are very few podcasts which are purely spiritual. So it's a pleasure speaking
Thank
to
you
you.
so much, Swami Mukundananda, for coming here. And until next time, thank you so much. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Meera. Wish you all the best in your personal journey and the work that you're doing.
Thank you.